Hello, my name is Keshwani. It's Keshwani, Keshwani. I have been solving math problems for GRE out of this book here, practicing to take the GRE general test, the 10th edition. If you do not own this already, if you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it in order to prepare for the exam. The problem that I'm about to solve is the one that you're going to find on page number 375, quantitative comparison questions, hence the QC. Number 7, let's take a look at it. Number 7. They want us to compare column A, column B. They want us to compare X versus Y. And here they tell us that n over X equals 428. 428. And here they tell us that n over Y, let me put this separately because we might need the room here. So let's just solve for X first. All we have to do is solve this equation for X. Okay, cross multiply. This is 421 over 1, so cross multiply like this. So you get n times 1 is n, and x times 428, and then divide both sides by 428. There you go, that's your x right here. Let's put it there. X equals n over 428. And we're going to do the exact same operation for the other one. Exact same thing. So n over y equals 107. Let's put this over 1. And of course the steps that I'm showing you here, for most people it's not necessary. I'm just doing it just in case. So again, cross multiply here. So y times 107, that's 107y equals n times 1, which is just n. Now divide both sides by 107. So this 107 drops out, and your y equals 100 n over 107 right here. Y equals n over 107. Now what we need to understand here is that the answer is not D. The answer is not D. What we need to understand is that n is some quantity. If you have certain quantity, whatever quantity that is, and if you were to divide that quantity into 428 parts, because we know that n is positive. And how do we know that n is positive? Because they tell you in the problem that n is greater than 0 if you look carefully. N is greater than 0. They tell you that. This is given. If we did not know that n is positive, then what I'm about to say would not apply, because what I'm about to say is that we have a certain quantity. I have a certain number of, think of this in terms of money. If I have certain amount of money, and if I divide that amount of money into 428 people, amongst 428 people, then each person is going to get a very small amount, as opposed to taking the same amount of money, n dollars, and dividing it among 107 people. In this case, if you take a quantity and divide it into only 107 parts, this quantity, of course, is going to be larger than this quantity, because we know that n, whatever that quantity is positive. Had it been negative, of course, then it would have been the opposite. It would have been true, and we would not be able to tell whether which one is bigger. But because we know that n is positive, a positive quantity divided into 428 parts is going to be a smaller quantity than the same positive quantity being divided up into 107 parts. That's all. As a matter of fact, if you want to be more precise, this quantity here actually is a fourth of this quantity. How do I know it's a fourth of it? Because 4 times 100 is 400, and 4 times 7 is 428. So that's what that is. But that wasn't necessary. What we just did was not necessary. This quantity is less than this quantity. Or to be more precise, this quantity actually happens to be a 1/4 of that quantity. That's all. Let's do next problem, number 8. Enough of this. Question number 8. I hope it was helpful. I'm going to give you about a couple of seconds to pause this thing if you have to, and then we'll go on to number 8. Number 8 is a geometry problem. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we go. they give you a picture and they tell us that this thing is 180 minus r degree. 180 minus r degree. And this of course is r and this is s. What is it that they want us to compare? And we are told that these two lines, L1 and L2, are parallel. L1 is parallel to L2. They want us to compare S versus 60. Well, let's see what we can do. Well, if this is 180 minus R, then this has to be R. This has to be R because R plus 180 minus R will give us the 180. Or if this is R, then this has to be R. And they want us to compare S versus 60. S versus 60. Well, what can we say about S? Absolutely nothing at all, because unless we know what this R is, unless we know what this R is, we cannot really tell anything about S, because all we know at this point, all we know from here is that R plus S equals 180. Because you see right here, this is a straight line, so R plus S equals 180. We know that for a fact, but unless we know R, unless we know the value of R, we cannot say anything at all, absolutely nothing at all about S. So if you ask me, if you are being asked to compare S versus 60, the answer is, how the hell do we know? The answer is D. No, we cannot tell. That's all. That's all there was. Number 8 that I just finished, 72% of the people had no problem with it whatsoever, because it's a fairly straightforward problem. Number 7 that I just did a little while ago, 2/3 of the people had no problem with it. 66% of the people got it right. 1/3 of the people missed number 7. But number 8 was missed by fewer than a 3/10. 28% missed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you wish to get hold of me for personal private tutoring, I do face-to-face tutoring, obviously, one-to-one tutoring. I also tutor over the internet via Skype and over the telephone. If there is anything at all that I can do to help you in your preparation for the GRE, go to my website at www.for gre.com and send me an email. Alright? Or you can go to www.KeshwaniPrep.com and send me an email from there. Okay? Thanks.